What's good, peeps? Thanks as always for passing by the channel, much appreciated. Hit that subscribe button if you guys are new. Don't forget as well, please, to like and share the videos. Thank you everyone who's been getting involved so far. Merry Christmas, peeps. I hope you all had a good Christmas day. I certainly did. Ate and drank more than I usually do, but hey, it's Christmas. You got to indulge and enjoy yourself a bit, haven't you? And here's to the new year coming up very soon. Speaking of that, what I thought I'd do, I would go over 5 big fights in 2021 which I really want to see. These need to be made given what we've received in 2020. 2020 was pretty good for boxing, like the Loma fights. We got Fury Wilder, we got Dylan White, we got Inoue. We've had a lot of good fights this year, but I think 2021 can be even better. Already coming up, we have got Campbell versus Garcia, which I am really intrigued about. I am tempted to do a video on that beforehand. I think it's 2nd of January we're going to see that. And Chocolatito versus Estrada, which is a really intriguing fight. I know they have met in the past. I think it was 2012. I think Estrada got the victory there. I'll have to check that out again. But this has been a fight that's been 8 years in the making. So that one, and that's literally best versus best, easily in that division. And we also know that Kovalev, Bertibiev and Caleb Plant all have fights planned in the early year, but none of them are really big fights. But what I'm thinking now is, here are 5 fights which I think need to be made in 2021. So number 5, I've got Canelo versus Golovkin 3 at 168. Canelo currently has the WBA, the WBC and the Ring Magazine titles for that division. I think, again, we've seen it before, so there's no need to go too much detail into this one, because both guys won this past week. You know, they both won recently, but I think I do need to see more from Golovkin. I need to see him at 168 first, but I think if it goes this way, if Golovkin fights Billy Joe Saunders and gets the WBO belt, and Canelo has his fight against Caleb Plant against the IBF belt, that's a super middleweight fight for all the marbles, people. That's all the marbles, and Canelo will be up for that, because he'll be able to kind of he'll be able to support that kind of legendary status which he wants about himself. Canelo is all about legacy. Big fights, trophy. That's what he wants. He doesn't really care who he has to go through. Like right now, if you look at Canelo, you're looking at a well-oiled machine, like something which just goes, you know, just like start it up and it goes. It doesn't care where or who. It just does what it just does what it says on the tin. So he will be up for that. Number 4, I've got Josh Taylor, a unification fight. Josh Taylor versus Jose Ramirez. This one I'm really hoping for. It's got Josh Taylor with the WBA and the IBF belt, and Ramirez has the WBC WO belt. So light welterweight scrap for all the marbles. Sign me up. You know, they're both undefeated fighters. Both men are promoted by Top Rank. I don't see why this fight hasn't been made already, to be honest. I know there was a couple of issues about Ramirez and mandatories, and Taylor had that fight against that absolute wet wipe, what was his name, Kong Song, who went down really questionably, I don't know. But this one for me is a huge fight, and whoever wins this is easily the number 1 at light welterweight. And I would favour Josh Taylor. That's not just because I'm Scottish, but it's also because I genuinely think Josh Taylor is one of the most underrated boxers in the world right now. I think Josh Taylor's a pound for pound top 10. I would have him in there above Golovkin. He's done more for me recently than like him. I'm a huge Golovkin fan, but Josh Taylor for me can win that, and if he wins that, nothing tells me that he can't go up to welterweight and cause a bit of damage up there. I'm a huge Josh Taylor fan, as you can tell. But that is my number 4, Josh Taylor versus Ramirez. Have that at the O2 Arena. Oh, incredible atmosphere. Number 3, a little bit controversial to what people might think. Teofimo Lopez versus Gervonta Davis. Teofimo Lopez got the WBA, WBO and the IBF belts for the lightweight division. And Gervonta, some people might say, why not Devin Haney? Because if it's a Devin Haney fight, it is a unification fight for all the marbles. I mean, for starters, I just think Tank is better. I think Gervonta Davis is better than Devin Haney in many ways. I think he's got more power, better jab, better movement. He's also done more for me recently in terms of like opponent. You know, Gervonta Davis fought Leo Santa Cruz at 135 and knocked him out cold. KO of the year, really, in my view. And I think he also is a bigger draw than Devin Haney. So I think that if Tank goes up to lightweight and he challenges Teofimo Lopez, certainly in America, you put that fight in Vegas, that fight is huge, because you could get like Floyd involved and he can promote it. You know, Teofimo can certainly kind of talk the talk, because you can say, well, I got these belts off Lomachenko of all people. I'm not sure what Loma's going to be doing now, but the thing is, they're both young fighters. I think they're both around the early 20s. And think about ESPN Top Rank would both get involved. They're clearly behind. Teofimo has got a lot of promotional material. Now, Bob Arum's behind him. Like, I reckon that one could be a huge matchup. And number 2, I think, is kind of one of the more obvious ones. We're getting into the really ones. Is I've spoke about this one quite a lot. Spence versus Crawford. You know, Spence holding the WBC and IBF belts. Crawford's got the WBO belt. A welterweight unification. 2 top 5 potentially pound for pound fighters. Like, this is the fight to make at 147. Like, I'm sorry, Manny Pacquiao, but this fight dwarfs any fight with Pac-Man in. Like, this is easily the bigger names in the division. It's 2 very different fighters as well. You've got a pressure fighter and you've got a boxer in Crawford. You've got different promotions behind it. You've got titles. You've got 2 undefeated fighters, skill. You've got recent victories. It's just got, this fighter's got everything. It's everything. Especially with that Errol Spence performance after coming back after that car accident. Like, now I'm just even more intrigued to see this fight. But I would favour Crawford to win it, because I think Crawford knows how to make the adjustments. Crawford has got a slight flaw of making adjustments too early in fights, which he can sometimes come to bite him in the arse. But I think if he gets more his discipline down, if he learns to make the adjustments mid to later in the fight, I would favour him to win that. So that, to me, have it in Vegas, that is easily the second biggest fight of 2021 and needs to be made. And of course, number 1, the biggest fight to be made in 2021. We all know what it is. Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua. The undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. That is why it is number 1. This fight just gets bigger and bigger every year. Like, I remember we first heard about it when Tyson Fury came back in 2018, and we were kind of like, you know, how would it? I still think even back then that AJ Wilder was still the bigger fight. As soon as Tyson Fury had that first fight against Wilder, the tables began to turn, and I thought, well, if Fury Wilder 2 is going to be big, which it was, Fury versus AJ is fucking enormous. That fight is just crazy. And when Fury beat Wilder the second time, because he won the first time, and AJ got his belt back from Andy Ruiz, showed he could like kind of change his style up and stuff like that, showed he could, you know, adapt. That fight just gets more and more intriguing, because we're not looking at stage 1 AJ, which focuses on power and finishing. We're looking at an AJ who can also box. I would favour Fury to win that fight, because I just think Fury is, again, similar to Canelo. I think he's just a complete fighter. But this fight has everything. You're talking 2 guys. AJ is kind of very humble. Tyson Fury is very outspoken. He's quite boastful. You have both guys who can punch. both guys who can kind of box, even though Fury is definitely the better boxer. They're both big physically, 6'9" and 6'6". They've both got huge followings in the UK. Like, the Americans probably don't know just how much behind these fighters we are. Like, we literally have got so many fans for these guys, and like, it means that whoever wins this is the lineal champion, the first undisputed heavyweight champion since Lennox Lewis, another Brit, by the way. And this is just the biggest fight in British boxing history, and for me, it has to happen next year. It has to happen. Like, I know there's a few roadblocks, because I thought a couple of fights to mention would be Usyk versus AJ, because I do think, even though it's nowhere near Fury AJ, that's still quite a big fight, and Usyk is kind of this annoying, kind of shadowy pest which won't go away. So what's the practicality of all these fights happening? Not high, but I do think they would be the ones, if I was looking at it, these are the ones to make. A couple of honourable mentions would be Bertabir versus Bivol as well, Inoue versus Akhmadaliev, the Uzbekistan lad at 122. That's if Inoue went up to 122 as well, because I think Inoue can clear at 118 easy. But those would be my top fights to make next year. Canelo versus GGG3 at 168. Josh Taylor versus Ramirez for all the marbles. Teofimo Lopez versus Gervonta Davis. Errol Spence versus Terence Crawford for all the marbles. And Tyson Fury versus AJ for all the marbles. Well, let's hope that 2021 is a good year, and certainly a better year than 2020. And I will see you all in the new year. Let me know what you think. Let's see if these fights can be made. Peace and love, people. Peace and love.